room is now dumb for having listened.
Welcome back to the Lunchtime Catch-Up Podcast, episode number 65. The Lunchtime Catch-Up Podcast is two blokes that have known each other forever, who catch up most days in the Melbourne CBD for lunch to talk everything Essendon Football Club. My name is Grant Hill, with me is Scott McNeese, and with us also is the age football writer Ronnie Lerner. G'day, Ronnie.
G'day, guys. How are we?
Great to hear from you, Ronnie. Look, we thought we'd have you from the top of the show.
Something different?
Yeah, we thought we'd get straight into the topics because we've obviously got there's been a lot of chatter about our club and actually all different kind of angles during the week. But I guess
Scotty and I have chewed on them. Scotty and I have chewed on all of the different angles. So we're really hoping to get your tempered professional opinion, Ronnie. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, and you can try and kind of calm me down too.
Yeah, so, Scotty's a bit angry at the moment.
So I've been a bit crook for my audience listeners. I've been a bit crook for the last 4 or 5 days. I actually went up to the SCG with a cold, watching the game, so you can tell how I was after the game.
Grumpy Scotty.
So look, let's talk about the game in itself, Ronnie. First, your sort of initial reactions.
Oh, well, listen, it's just much of the same. Just that would have to go down as one of the most disappointing Essendon performances in the Worsfold era. You think of round 1 this year, GWS. You think of round 8 last year, Carlton. It's a podium finish Friday night. I mean, you're up against arguably one of the worst teams in the comp. You know, they're missing the guy that has tormented Essendon for the best part of a decade in Lance Franklin. You know, a couple of weeks prior to this game, they pushed Collingwood to within a kick.
Yeah.
To serve that up was just absolutely, really, it was insipid. It was insipid from an Essendon perspective. And for the second year in a row, it's a fairly strong argument to mount that the bottom team has once again railroaded Essendon's finals hopes. It's really history repeating. And it goes even deeper than, I mean, what we saw on Friday night, just what we see on the surface. There's a lot of, it really brings up deeper questions to what does the club stand for? I think you've been hearing over the weekend that, you know, and then, then you after the siren, you see Heppel and Myers having a smile. There's all sorts of opinions of that. To me, I personally didn't really like it. If I was an Essendon fan, I wouldn't like that. And it raises the question: where is the club at? I mean, the last 15 years, I think you could argue that mediocrity is being accepted. I think it's a soft football club as we look at it right now. They're pretty, even things like, we'll talk about later. I'm sure the Dane Rampe point, the goalpost shake. Yeah. I mean, I think to myself, back to the guys like Graham McMahon, guys like Peter Jackson, guys like Kevin Sheedy. You really think that we wouldn't have heard a peep from them over this situation over the weekend? We did not hear a thing. We have not heard a thing from Xavier Campbell. Haven't heard a thing from Lindsay Tanner. John Worsfold didn't say a thing about it. No one has made a statement about how furious they are that 4 points were essentially robbed of the club. And it really makes me wonder, are these truly Essendon people? I just really wonder that. I think there are some significantly deep issues that are really plaguing the club. And it may even get back to the whole, you look back to the supplement saga in 2013, and maybe I think one of the main objectives of the hierarchy was to present Essendon in this real, light, I suppose, want for a better word, cuddly club with a good image, really improve the image, be nice, happy smiles. But it's gone too far. They just don't stick up for. They don't stick up for anyone. They just cop it, and they just cop anything that comes their way. And it really, I think they've gone too far in that respect, and that's turned the club into a very soft club. It is light years from the club, as I said, under that trio of McMahon, Jackson, and Sheedy. It's a long way away from that, and I just don't know where they are at the moment.
Well,
so you put that to one side. I got off on a bit of a tangent there.
No, mate. That's. I'll tell you what, Scotty and I we're talking about that very subject. Scotty's been big on the mediocrity thing, again that thing for Myers and Heppel, for me, they're allowed to smile, they're allowed to stuff, but geez, after a loss like that, I don't get there's no urgency.
Nah, listen. I agree with you. I've got no issues with players shaking hands, and players. A lot of these players around the league, they often play every week, and they play against someone that they came through junior ranks with. So you understand that they'll have maybe a bit of a laugh with the opposition or that sort of stuff afterwards. But there are certain scenarios. I mean, Essendon has just lost to the bottom team. The only team that Sydney beat this year was Carlton. Okay,
Yeah.
so they're sitting on the bottom. And their finals hopes have taken a huge hit, arguably a fatal hit. Who knows? Because this is what happened last year.
Yep.
It's a long way back from where they are again. I know they're an extra win ahead. They're 3-5, not 2-6. But boy, oh boy, the comp is arguably even tighter this year. I mean, for instance, who would have thought? Who would pick Hawthorn to beat the Giants on the weekend? Who would have tipped Richmond to beat Freo the way they did on the weekend?
Yeah.
It is so tight to give up games like this in such a tight season when you've been touted as a top four chance. In the last two off seasons, you brought in Stringer, Sard, Smith, Shield. Now by doing that, you are saying you are having a crack at the premiership.
Yep, that's a window.
And in that 2-year period to potentially not even make the finals, that is nothing short of a catastrophe for the football club. I don't care. Anyone can spin it any way they like. That is a catastrophe if they don't make the finals for the second year in a row with 4 guns that they've brought in. Arguably 4 of their best players that are, obviously Smith not this year, but he was best and fairest last year. String is arguably one of the most consistent players of the club since he came, and Sard's been great.
Brilliant.
And Shield, I know his disposal efficiency hasn't been great, but he's been a solid contributor.
Yeah.
To not make the finals again with all those recruitments, that is an absolute indictment on the football club.
Well, I mean, so that's a big introduction, and it's an
we love it. I think I cast my mind back and I said, we'll get your professional measured feedback there.
That's how I see it.
We 100% agree.
I'm not.
You got to call it as you see it.
I think that's a rather reasonable assessment. I don't think emotion's got much anything to do with it. You have a real deep look at what is going on at the football club, and I don't think any of that's unreasonable. What I just said.
No, I agree.
I'm just going to give you some of my thoughts, and just on those little topics. So let's quickly do the Heppel-Myers thing, right? So I'm in complete agreement. I think we all know Heppel and Myers in some way or form, and we've seen them at the club, met them at the club. They're very, very good Essendon people, very mature guys, very passionate. I have no issue with that side. I don't even question that Heppel's hurting after the game. It's just you cannot have that visibility of emotion 4 seconds after that loss. That was my critical thought. Is that you can go into the locker room and say, Heps, I would say, Myers, mate, you're getting old. You can have that kind of a little bit of banter, but national TV's on David Myers at that moment, and that was me. You just have the understanding of the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's seen the photos and the footage. Zach Merritt has his head towards the ground in pain, basically. That's the shot. I go, well, that's what I actually would have expected of that moment, of like sheer disappointment that they've lost the game.
No, I agree with that. And listen, you can't begrudge Heppel. I mean, he was probably one of Essendon's best players.
For what he's had at, actually.
Yeah. He tried his guts out, and but he was part of a system which we'll talk about, I'm sure, with regards to John Worsfold, that is just completely predictable and does not win football games. Like it's easy to get carried away with what they did in the 3 wins, but when you look back at Melbourne North, I mean, they're not exactly setting the world on fire, are they? In Brisbane, okay, Brisbane I'll give was a very good win, but even that Collingwood game, you have a look back at that and you think, well, did Essendon get close as a result of a sound structure going forward, or was it just purely as a result of some freakish individual moments of brilliance from guys like Stringer and Danaher?
Really good
and that is not sustainable. You cannot win premierships if all you're relying on is miracle freakish bits of play. To some of Danaher's and Stringer's goals that they were just absolutely unbelievable. But that's not sustainable. You need a sound forward structure which you can rely on when things aren't going your way, and it is a shambles. I mean, and a huge knock on John Morsford is that he does not change anything. What the players do, what they've done for the last 8 quarters against Geelong and Sydney, they just keep mindlessly bombing the ball forward with absolutely no thought, no method, no system, and it's embarrassing. Guys like, in the Geelong game, for instance, Tom Stewart, Harry Taylor, and Mark Blixhouse, they must have just been laughing.
They love the Essendon football
built for that sort of stuff.
They would have just been laughing. They ended up with about 40, and Colin Jasny ended up with, and Henry, they all ended up with about 40, 50 marks between them. It was actually laughable. And then the same thing on the weekend. Aaliyah and Rampe, they just thought all their Christmases came at once. It is so predictable. It's so predictable the way Essendon go forward. And it's even more of an indictment on the weekend because there was no Danaher. Yet they kept on delivering the ball forward as if there was 2 or 3 key forwards in the forward line. Yet they just kept going like it reminds me of about 10 years ago when Alwyn Davey was sometimes under night with this key forward target. Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody. It's just it's madness. They keep going long to a 179 centimetre bloke. It's just crazy but they keep doing it. The vast majority of Essendon fans, within 5-10 minutes of a game starting against Geelong and Sydney, they can see what's going to happen. They know what's happening. They can see how the game's going to pan out. Yet the coach's box, they don't change a thing. They just let it go. I don't know whether it's pig-headedness or just a lack of care or stubbornness. I don't know what it is, but they just think that this plan that they implement where you get more inside 50s but less marks inside 50 is going to work.
I must admit,
it's just it's a mess. It is a mess.
I must admit, when I was at SCG, so I'm about 30 yards out from goal, and what I decided to do, because I hadn't had that kind of angle, I'm right near the boundary line, and normally I'm sort of an elevated view at games, and I thought I'll just watch our forward set up and just to see what's happening, and just to see how sort of drilled they are, and I get the whole midfield right. Trust me, it's the most painful thing to see us bomb it. But even when there's instances, say we've got a mark or a free kick 70 yards out, I was genuinely surprised how little system our forwards actually had. Structure. And you're a little bit like me. You love your NBA as well. Just basic blockings and screens to get guys to a lead. You know, just things that you go. It's just those systems in place. To try and get a guy free, to try and get a stringer an extra 10 meters
on a lead.
And then to see Sydney then do the opposite, like they were actually sometimes blocking hooker and making him go deep and then getting a Sydney guy sort of in front of almost like another Sydney guy and taking pack marks. They were reading us really well. And you go, just simple things, you go, I'm just confused about how well drilled as a coaching side to the game. They're just all small things. You go, but why aren't we doing blocking screens? Why am I watching the opposition doing all this stuff and seeing us just have a hopeful approach to the game?
It's interesting you say, because you don't see this on TV, but at the ground you're quite right. You can actually see what, like if an Essendon player has a mark probably 85, 80 metres out from goal, how often do you see when you're at the ground that the players ahead of the guy in possession it's just stagnant. No one just leads. No one leads. I don't know what it is. It's just maybe it's because opposition teams have done very well in clogging up the space inside Essendon's 450, so they've actually got nowhere to lead. And then the opposition will more often than not they'll force a turnover, sprint down the other end of the ground with a beautiful forward 50 with hardly any clutter. Which is pretty much the modus operandi for most Essendon games over the years. It's really confusing. I really think a lot of it goes to the feet of John Worsfold as coach because nothing changes. He very much in the last couple of weeks he's looking a lot more and more like yesterday's man from a tactical sense. When you look at some of the other coaches around the league, he just doesn't seem like he's up with it. He's got all this talent at his disposal, but he just does not know how to harness it in the proper manner. And questions need to be asked: do Essendon need to get someone in that can harness all this talent properly? Because it's a cutthroat world, the AFL world. If you don't make the hay while the sun shines, you're going to miss your chance at a premiership, and you'll have to start all over again. So everything has. I mean, I think of no, I'm not necessarily having a crack at Brett Radden, but I mean Carlton, they had Chris Judd on their list for how many years? All they ever did was win 2 finals. You've got to make the most of it when you have such a talented list. Now, I think this is one of the most talented lists Essendon has had since their last premiership.
That's the frustration. That is my genuine frustration, is the waste of these. Last year and so far to this point this year, it's like where am I seeing any progression? I'm not sure I'm seeing. I'm seeing basically if you put pressure on Essendon, if you put pressure on Essendon, they butcher the ball like no other side.
Yes.
In the AFL, and we're so easy to read. Is what I'm trying to say. Is from an opposition standpoint, tactically, extremely
predictable, and if they don't change, then I mean they're up against one of the great modern day tacticians this week in Ross Lyon. I mean, he must be rubbing his hands together. If no change is made to Essendon's game plan this week, don't worry, Freo will get a win. They will win this week, and it doesn't matter if it's at Marvel Stadium. You got Ross Lyon, who watches the game as keenly as anyone. It could be a really long night for the Bombers if some urgent changes aren't made to this predictable game plan that everyone knows just doesn't work.
All right, can I jump over the fence for a split second and play devil's advocate here? All right, in the last 3 years, like you said, we've grabbed Triple S and we've grabbed Shieldy now. Quadruple S, right? We've grabbed all those 4 boys. Now they're all 4 of them are midfielders. They're important to the club. They're midfielders in the modern game of footy.
Well, Sart's more of a defender and Stringer's more of a forward, I would say.
Actually, no, so you are. Yeah, that's entirely correct, right? So we've got a couple of key midfielders. Have we given Woosher and the coaching staff, and again, this is devil's advocate here, and believe me, devil's advocate through clenched teeth, trust me. But have we given the coaching staff and the side in general enough time to gel together as a team to be able to be as fluid and consistent and high performing as we think they should, right? Because when you look at those names on a piece of paper, it looks like a top 4 team, absolutely, right? But have we given them enough time? Like, do we need time for these guys to gel, time for these guys to learn the game plan and become better at what they do as a team?
Yeah, good question. Valid question. The way I see it, I think they gelled incredibly well in the second half of last year. So I just don't think that there's really, on that perspective, personally, I just don't think there's too many excuses in that regard, because after round 8 last year, they looked $1 million in the second half of this, and they were gelling magnificently. So what happens between then and this year? Like, do they forget how everyone plays? It's a real mystery.
It leads me into my next question on that one, is that we the last 10 games, brilliant. Everybody went, oh, yeah, get Joey back. Get Shield, hopefully that'll be all good. Start of next season, we should be good. We'll have a full pre-season into all the players and it'll be great, right? Then we come out in the JLT and serve up that awful crap. And in rounds 1 and 2, we what the hell was going on was the summary of that. And then all of a sudden we changed our game plan to this fast-running game plan and it was successful for a minute. The question I've got is that what the hell were they teaching the footballers over the off-season and the pre-season that they had to abandon it 2 games into the season? Is that the game plan that Woosher put up to the board and said, this is what I'm going to do, this is how we're going to play, this is what we're going to do, the coaching staff all built into it, and then 2 games into the season, we had to give it up?
Well, it's not a bad point you raised, because it was a very similar game plan to the one they started with in 2018, because it was very similar, like, that chipping sideways, going backwards, launching all your plays from defence, and essentially taking way too long to get the ball forward, and then you're giving the opposition heaps of time to get back, and it's too late.
Yeah,
that was essentially the first 8 weeks last year. It was the first 2 weeks this year. I think they recognised that, okay, it's just not going to work, and they pulled the pin again. It was almost like they brought forward. I think we spoke about this last time. They brought forward the change 6 weeks this year. They brought it forward so to I guess give themselves more of a chance to recover the season. But what's happened is that they've been found this new the game style that they changed has also been found out now. So I just and I think it's a mental thing. I think you look at last year. They played brilliantly once the pressure was off and they couldn't make finals anymore. And this year, when the finals were back, they're back into it and they're back in finals are back in play. They're 3-5. Yeah, and it's as simple as that. I just think, it's a soft football club as we sit right here right now. The Essendon Football Club has become incredibly soft, and I just that's the way I see it. I've been watching Essendon my whole life, and this is
It's not a fun period.
This is it's a very different club to where it was 20 years ago. I'll give it the red hot tip. I mean, the Essendon Football Club was a feared organisation under Sheedy and those kind of. It's just not that anymore at all.
Can we ask? One of the things I said to Scotty before the podcast is that I was watching. I follow practically the entire club on Instagram and all the players and that sort of stuff. And tell me if I'm being too harsh here, but I see there was a lot of photos of the boys in Sydney before and after the game, and there was a lot of smiles and a lot of laughs, and they were having swims in the sea baths and all that sort of stuff. There was a lot of, I don't know, just after, like you said, one of the worst losses going around to a side that we should have hammered. There just seems to me that I'm probably selling them very short, but it seems like they're going through the motions. Do we have the ability to hold the players, the older players that were there during the saga? Do we have the ability to hold them to account here? Or are they spent? Like, did they use up all of their enthusiasm and their excitement and their gut running and their attitude and real drive to win the game of footy? Did they use that all up in the emotion of the saga?
Good questions. I don't know how long's a piece of string? Very good questions. And I don't know if we'll ever really get an answer to it, because I think what you're speaking about is unquantifiable. Like, I don't even know if the players would know that we're involved in that, if they, where they are on an emotional level, subconsciously, how they're feeling with regards to all that. Or they, are they spent after all that? Who knows? It's one of those philosophical things. I don't think we'll ever really get the answer to.
Personally, if you told me, Haps, Hurley, Hooker, all pretty silly, solid footballers.
Yeah,
but,
true. But I just want to see. I want to see the pissed off. I mean, if we're not going to get it out of Xavier, and you mentioned before that we didn't hear anything out of Xavier and that sort of stuff. The question I've got for everyone is, mate, is it just to get it on the record? Like, if for Xavier to come out and say this is really bad, like Scotty was mentioning earlier, that Jeff Kennett would come out and just call the AFL out and call them every name under the sun. Is it not Xavier to do it, or is he thinking it's a waste of time because the AFL is never wrong?
Well, even if he does, I think even if he does think that the AFL it's a waste of time, the AFL is never wrong, and he's right, by the way. That would be the right sort of, thought process. But he's got to show the fans and the supporters that, this does not sit well with him, does not sit well with the club, and he's angry about it. He just has to let people know. And the fact that he did not say a thing about it, it's just, it's not on. I just don't think it's good enough. You want the leadership to stick up for the club. And listen, I spoke to you guys off air. The goalpost shaking is probably the least of Essendon's concerns. And I know it pinched, Essendon could have pinched 4 points and all that sort of stuff. But, I do agree that something should have come from the club. You had the chief executive officer of the AFL saying on Saturday morning that technically it was a free kick. Well, then, if that's the case, then doesn't the club have to at least voice their absolute fury at the fact that it wasn't paid?
Well, that's been mine. It's the posting for me has been one of the hardest messages for me to tweet with fans' reaction because obviously they come back straight away and say, look, we can't keep blaming the umpires. And I actually agree with that. But I do see it in two different instances. And with the post, one thing why I get frustrated with our management is it is a big business still. And this is my personal belief. It is still, AFL's a big business. You got sponsors and everything. You got fans. You got 80,000 members. you've basically missed out on 4 points, even though we didn't deserve it at all. But you still have missed out on a very fatal flaw that was actually pointed out by our players as it was happening.
Yeah, Stringer and Hooker were quite quick on that.
Yeah, and then you've had the AFL reaction. He's been... I mean, there's reports now that the guy's been charged by unbecoming behaviour, and our club just stands still and says nothing, and that's 4 points. Like and again, I have to separate that from everything we've discussed the last 15, 20 minutes on things that are having issues with the club. But I also, the backbone of the club is just as big an issue for me, and this is an example of why I want some leadership, because Eddie Maguire would be having flips right now because let's just say we had put in a bad performance. So did Sydney. Went fantastic. They butchered the ball. They went overly, inspiring. They did well with some kids, but it's still a 5-point whatever game, and if we sit 4-4, it's a different world. Now we obviously have different issues, but I still think the club has got to stand up sometime, especially after the saga, and say, look, that part's over. We're not, and excuse my language, we're not kissing ass anymore. Like, we've got to actually stand up and say, no, that's actually an incorrect statement, or which I believe Gil made an incorrect statement. That's my personal belief. But that actually was a free kick. That is the law. And we are, as a club, disappointed. We understand it can't change, but we as a club are extremely disappointed in the outcome of that game. But we understand there's other issues that we need to resolve as well.
Yeah, that makes you wonder why nothing has been put out. It really does make you wonder. It's really it's quite odd. It is quite odd. And like you say, I mean, look at Melbourne on the weekend. They played pretty ordinary as well, but they managed to snatch 4 points, and they're salvaging their season possibly. Yeah. It could be the launching pad for them. So whether you play well or not, it's very similar to Essendon. If they somehow pinched the 4 points, possibly that could have salvaged their season and could have gone to bigger, better things. But as it stands, it's rather than evening up the ledger at 4-4, they're now 2 behind at 3-5. So it's just. Yeah, I mean, I know if I was the CEO or the president, I'd be making a very angrily worded statement, such as, like you say, Jeff Kennett or Eddie Maguire, no doubt would have.
Yeah.
You're probably all a bit gun-shy too, though, I would imagine. They're down at the Bombers about angry statements and the like.
Yeah. You could
no more open letters, yeah.
Yeah, no more letters. All right, what we'll do, I think we've been chatting for like 28 minutes. It's been brilliant. We'll go for a little quick break. On the other side of the break, we'll have a bit of a chat about the game. With Ronnie Lerner.
And Ronnie, after the break, I just want to have a quick chat to you about how the development and our younger players are going.
No worries.
And welcome back to the Lunchtime Catch-Up podcast. Now then, we're back with Ronnie and Scotty. Scotty, what did you want to say?
So let's go discuss our younger guys, Ronnie, because this has been my concern. If you hear this podcast a few times, I bring this up a lot. The in and outs of the younger players and the no in and outs of some of the older players, I think has created a culture where there's some kids at the Essendon Football Club that are just playing with zero confidence. And whether it's an Aaron Francis, whether it's a Langford, whether it's a Parrish, these guys who are fairly big draft picks, and like obviously Dodoro would be very much invested to see how they're going as well, and because they're a big price to pay when you're talking like picks 5 and 6 and those sort of things. I'm just wondering what your thought is, because that's my concern. Is like I'm seeing Parrish play in the forward pocket and forward, and then I'm seeing McGrath playing back in defence, and we're not recruited these guys to play there. but it's their third and fourth year, especially with a guy like Parrish, and they're just not coming on. And it's my concern that I see a Stringer, Shield, Smith winning the Crichton last year, that the guys coming into the club are the kind of the stars, and the guys who were meant to have invested and developed aren't.
Yeah, interesting. To be honest, I actually think Parrish in the last couple of weeks has looked quite good. I think he's played some of the best footy he's played in his career. To be honest, I think maybe we're just seeing it differently, which is fair enough. But I actually think Parrish...
I think just on that, I think I'm talking about a 2-year kind of picture that the last 18...
Oh, okay.
So okay. I fully get that. Actually, I thought it was one of our best. But I think overall, I for them to get consistency is my concern. Do we have that strategy in place? Now that he's in form, like, I don't want him to have a bad game and then say you're out of the side.
Yeah, well, that would be bad. And I think... on that same point, I was quite confused by Jordan Ridley's omission on the weekend. I didn't quite understand that. I thought he was building quite nicely. I know he's still got a lot of areas, a few areas to work on to get to that next level. But I thought, he's young. He's sort of the curve is upwards. So to sort of see him dropped, that was a bit surprising. Langford, I can totally understand because he was. Oh, geez, I don't want to be too harsh, but he really was one of Essendon's worst players against Geelong. Everything he did, he couldn't do anything right. I really felt sorry for him against the Cats. Maybe that is a byproduct of what you were talking about, just that lack of confidence, not knowing where you stand, especially after the way he finished last year. I really thought, as me, Essendon people thought, that he was going to go to the next level this year, but it just hasn't panned out that way for him. And who knows why that is. He does look like someone that is just lacking total confidence, which is, again, that falls on I guess the strategy of selection and that sort of stuff, and making sure that the coaches and the welfare guys are getting around and letting him know what's happening, why it's happening. If that's not happening, then you can understand why a young kid's confused and devoid of confidence, because that's exactly what he looked like against Geelong, and he could not justify staying in the team after that performance for whatever reason. But Francis has been an odd one. I mean, he's making skill errors that I never thought I'd ever see him make. He's just blatantly missing targets. That just you would not expect a guy. Another one that finished the year last year so well and so full of promise. You would never expect to see him make such mistakes.
Even those 2 shots on goal with Geelong, I've never seen him kick that badly towards goal. He's usually a gun.
That's right. And I know he was forced down there through necessity, but the kid finished strongly last year in defence. So now you're getting thrown down into attack. I don't know. Maybe that's throwing him out a bit. It is a bit concerning. I think McGrath's been quite good. I'm not too concerned about Andrew McGrath. I think he's coming along very nicely, and he's probably been one of Essendon's better players this year in general, not just amongst the youngsters. I don't think there's too many issues with that. I think we're talking off air about Braden Ham. As I said, we were saying that we're sure that he's got all the potential in the world. 18-year-old kid to crack into the senior team at that size and that age is a great effort. But it is odd that you sort of see him getting game time, especially such a crucial game. I mean, they were 3 and 4, and season basically on the line, and I don't know.
The SCG and in front of a parochial crowd and all that.
Yeah, well, I was a little bit surprised because I thought, I watched the VFL closely, and you see Minot get 2 or 3 best on grounds in a row, and I just thought, and Minot's a bit more mature in his body and physique, and I thought, gee, there's a good opportunity for him to come in. And I must admit, I mean, Ham's been playing okay, but just not, to the level of what I think a Minot.
For an 18-year-old kid, right? He's a skinny 18-year-old kid, you wouldn't figure it.
But I must admit, I genuinely was surprised Myers came in, and I'll be interested to see on Thursday where they rate that performance, because I think his issue at the moment, he's lost a bit of power in his legs, and I think that was a weapon that kind of propelled him sometimes, as much as a bit of bully work. But if he kind of only self-admission, I mean, after the game, that he's lost a bit of power in his legs, and I thought, you're in a little bit of trouble then, David.
Yeah.
Because that's part of really your weapon to the AFL and to us.
And I think another man at the crossroads as we speak is David Zaharakis. I just really think, I don't know where he's at with his football. I really think he's at the crossroads. This is going to end up being a very important year for David, I reckon. I think, if he doesn't pull the proverbial finger out, he could find himself looking elsewhere for opportunities. I don't see him having impact on game anywhere near he did when at his prime. And I think those are two guys, Myers and Zaharakis, really stand out. Speaking of selection, geez, I thought Mark Bagley was a bit stiff. I mean, two weeks prior to the Sydney game, he was one of the reasons why Essendon almost beat Collingwood. I think 3 goals in the second half. I'm not too sure what else you want from your small forward. And it was only 10 goals each that day. Like, geez. And then, okay, it was poor against Geelong, but geez, he had his mates, and for them to
he
pluck
wasn't
him
Robinson
out.
Crusoe. Yeah.
Do you know my biggest surprise of the Bagley omission was actually Woosh's comments about basically he self-admitted that he's unfortunately with Joey missing being managed, the forward line had a total new look and restructure, and we just had no sync. And I thought to myself, then why the hell did you drop Bagley? Because wouldn't you want to lessen the damage of having Fantasia and Waller looking to their right and seeing a guy like Bagley and understanding how he plays, so there's a little bit more better chemistry. And I thought to myself, well, this is not the week, then you should have omitted him, because everything that you're complaining about is actually goes against your selection, I guess, for me anyway. Because Bagley is one of those guys when I talk about blocking and those sort of things and creating. He does those kind of 1%ers that actually can get a Waller or a Stringer some space.
He's still a good pressure player this year, and he kicks goals. So I just found that quite odd too, to be honest.
Makes of us.
Now, another question. What was it? This season we went and got Benny Rutten and his magnificent defence methodologies that he's brought to Essendon, apparently. And we went and got Dan Richardson, or whatever it is, from Richmond the year before that, because he was a guru as well. So we went and got the gurus of defence and
Luke Ball.
And Luke Ball, we went and got all these guys. Is that working for you, Ron?
The results speak for themselves. You'd have to say. I don't. Right now, nothing's really going right in the front office, as they say in America. In the coaching, the footy department. The results speak for themselves. What are they? 15 and 15, aren't they? Since 15 the last 30 games since the start of last year.
Wow,
like
that's
or,
telling.
or
That's
14
telling.
and 16. They win 12 last year. Was it 12? Yeah, it was 12. It was 12. So they're dead bang on 50%, 15 out of 30 with all this recruitment that they've done. That's just not good enough.
No, not with
and
the
obviously it's not working. And you might be right. Maybe you need to wait for it to bleed in, and maybe it's a delayed onset, or for lack of a better word. But no, 15 from 15, that's just bang on average, isn't it? So 15 from 30 is bang on average.
Yeah, I mean, I was even just as a team, like we're 8th for points for, 11th for points against, we're 10th for disposal differential, 11th for contested ball, 10th for uncontested ball, 8th for inside 50. So it reads like it reads a team. It reads a team that is just not being competitive.
No, it's just
not to the level where you need to be. No.
But especially too with those players, like it's very strange as an Essendon supporter, and I know that probably the listeners would sort of feel the same. Is that I was looking forward to this year of football more than I think I have in 10 years or more, only because we were going to get Joey back, who was almost right at the end of the year, but then he had a full pre-season. And we were going to have Dylan Shield. We signed him, and that was brilliant. Well, he was, but didn't. That's when. But I was really looking forward to this season to get some clear air and to really start to pressure, because, like you said, we've pulled off. I don't know that if you might know, but can you name another club who's grabbed in 3 years the kind of contributors and names that we have ever? Like Stringer, Smith, Sarden, and all those guys have been incredible players and are in the top 10 of our club now. But it's really been disappointing and confusing, the losses that we've had, because when we've been bad, we've been really bad. And players like that on a piece of paper, and Dan Richardson and Truck Rutten and all those sort of things, that shouldn't be the case.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, and it wasn't. It was 2 years. They've picked up all those guys in 2 off seasons. It's not even 3.
Yeah.
So it's even, it's a shorter window. I mean, off the top of my head, Hawthorn's been a pretty prolific recycler. They've been pretty good at picking players for their needs over the years. But no, with that amount of talent in such a short period of time, as I said earlier in the podcast, that is a statement of intent. That is, we are here to win premierships. It is not here to miss finals 2 years in a row, which they are well on track for. And if that occurs, Worsfold, he's only got a year to run his contract. That's more than within the realms of a payout. Like that's these days, coaches are guaranteed that extra year, almost like it's a golden handshake, because the clubs want to sort of they add that extra year. They extend it just to avoid pressure from media and that sort of stuff. So coaches, when they get sacked, are generally, it's basically almost always they get an extra year payout. That's what happens. So he's well within the sweet spot of that scenario if things do not change.
So look, we'll start to sort of wrap it up because we've had you for ages. Sorry. Well, let's just quickly look to the Freo game. I guess we've got the Fantasia news, which isn't great, and I believe Heps is 50-50 at best. So we've got a few things to worry about. I think it's time, but tell me what you think. I think Hartley needs to come into this side to release hooker forward, just to have a bit of a marking presence. So at least Waller and a few guys can get into the game.
Doesn't have to take pack marks.
What are your thoughts? I think they have to start making that change of Hartley coming in and just to release a few defenders going forward.
Yeah, well, he might actually have to come in anyway because, Hurley hurt his ankle late in that game as well, and I'm not too sure what the situation is there with Hurls. I would assume he would play, but
from what I heard, he's actually not too bad.
Okay, well, that's good news for Essendon. Some rare good news.
Very good news, yeah.
Yeah, so if Hartley does come in, because Ambrose is playing, he was one of Essendon's best. Yeah. Sam Reid didn't do a thing really on Friday night. So, if he came in and teamed up with Hurley and Ambrose and Hooker goes forward, and Danaher does come back as well. So if and Danaher and Hooker, don't forget they worked very well in 2017.
They did, yeah, that's true.
Kicked 100 goals together. I think they were the first key forward duo since Lloyd and Lucas to kick 100 goals between them in 2017. So it's not as if they're strangers to each other.
No, well, and Hooker likes sort of being based in that forward sort of full forward setup, and Joey likes running up the ground, so it kind of works well.
Oh. Yeah. So if you give us what do you reckon is the top 3 things we need to change this week for Freo?
Oh, well,
without sarcasm.
Yeah, without
I think it all comes down to the delivery to the forward 50. That is the prime number one thing that they have to change. It has to change. You cannot keep mindlessly, predictably bombing the ball long, especially against the Ross Lyon coach team. And you got guys like Hamling, Alex Pearce, Luke Ryan down back. Very, very, very good key defenders. Alex Pearce is arguably in All-Australian contention right now. So you cannot keep doing this, against teams that have very sound defences.
I made the joke to a friend. I made a joke to a friend the other day. The whole midfield should get a tattoo on their arm saying "Lower your eyes."
Yes, lower the eyes. Be clever. If it takes an extra kick to enter forward 50, do it. But don't just cough up the ball because these days a turnover in your defensive 50 can very quickly become a shot on goal down the other end.
Yeah.
So it's what I mean. So that is the main thing, and pressure and hard at the contest. That's another real area that has to return because in the last 2 weeks, Geelong and Sydney were by far the hungrier team, by far.
Yeah, that's really disappointing to watch when you can notice as a fan, geez, that the other side just wants it more.
Yeah, I'd say those are the main areas that they really have to improve this week. And it's not easier said than done because when you're taught a way to play, to just change it up. But I mean, then again, you look at a guy like I'm not comparing Woosha to Alistair Clarkson, but you look at Alistair Clarkson and the way he can just reinvent himself on the fly as he did on the weekend. I mean, Who would have thought after that loss to Melbourne that they were going to come out and just smash GWS? He's a genius. So it requires, he shows that this modern day, it requires, if you can see things are not going right, you have to fix them.
Yeah.
And if that means implementing a new style on the fly, as Essendon did last year and this year already, then do it. You've got to do it. You have to do it. Otherwise, you're just going to keep losing games, and September will become a distant, well, not even a memory, because they haven't been there since 2017. So 3-6 this week if they lose, that will just about be lights out. So it is a massive game, and things have to change right now.
And look, just before we go, I quite tip for Woosha that we get Mason Redmond to kick out instead of McKenna.
Oh my goodness gracious! What was? Jeez, he would have sent. I think Conor McKenna should be billed for about $20,000 of living room damages around Australia. I think there would have been TVs, chairs, tables all smashed.
But I
those turnovers.
I love Connor, but geez, he makes some bad mistakes sometimes.
Far out. So it was reminiscent of remind me of Nathan Love-Murray. I know he's a fan favourite and he was tough, but geez, he made some cleans coming out, some better goals.
Yeah.
It just brought back memories of that, and geez. Give the kick-out duties to anyone but Connor, please.
Well, I mean, I know he's young, and so it's a lot of responsibility, but clearly Mason Redmond, to me, has a clear, composed kind of manner about him.
Yeah, he's already one of the best kicks in the team, if not the best. He's a beautiful kick. Yeah.
And ironically, probably the second best is Ridley. but that just for me, it's like just give the kid the ball, and then at least I think he makes fairly good decisions and can sum up a situation quite well. Look, we've had you way too long. You've been awesome.
Absolutely.
It's the podcast we had to have to get off our chest.
We didn't get much onto the other sort of 3 weeks. We didn't, but this one's been great.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we talked about Geelong, and that was let's not talk about that.
Forget about that.
But thanks for always joining us at the end of each 4 weeks, mate. We always appreciate it. We always appreciate your honesty. That's all we ask.
And we get heaps of feedback too, Ronnie, from the listeners when you're on the episodes. It's they're always one of our highest listened to episodes. So we really appreciate you coming on.
Good to hear. That's a pleasure, fellas.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up there. We're on the socials, as they say. We're on Facebook at the Lunchtime Catch Up Podcast Facebook page. The Instagram page is the Lunchtime Catch Up Instagram page. Lunchtime Catch Up Podcast Instagram page. We're on Twitter. We couldn't get the Lunchtime Catch Up Podcast, so it's just the Lunch Catch Up on Twitter. You can listen to us on SoundCloud, Spotify, and iTunes. And Ronnie, where can they get hold of you if they want to get hold of you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Ronnie Lerner, and that is spelled RONNYLERNER.
Beautiful. Thanks again for coming on, mate. We'll talk to you again in 4 weeks.
No worries.
And go Bombers for the weekend.
If we lose the next 4, then.
I know, mate.
Could be just a silent wait.
I'll have bought that new flat screen that I put my glass through for no reason.
All right.
Thanks very much, Ronnie. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks, Ronnie. You're a legend.
No worries. See you guys.
Catch you, mate. Bye.
See you, mate.
And goodbye to our listeners as well.
And goodbye to our listeners as well. Let's leave that last bit in. We thought we'd already said it, but no. Thank you everybody for listening. Great to have Ronnie on as well. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Yeah, look, I know it's been a little bit of a downbeat show. Look, generally we've got a bit of a surprise almost when Ronnie teed off.
I know. But Ronnie teed off. That was great.
Look, a lot of fans are thinking that way, and
he is that. He is after that.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's passionate, and we can't hold someone back that way. But we're passionate as well. We're frustrated. Everyone's frustrated. So. So we just think that we've got a fairly good team that can do more than probably what it's producing.
Absolutely, that's 100% correct. So thanks so much to Ronnie. Thank you very much, Scotty. We'll see you guys on next week.